For this video, we'll be using 1.5mm cord in white, brown, and red, a 3.5mm crochet hook, a darning needle, stitch markers, a pair of scissors, fabric glue, and fiber fill. The stitches used in this video include the single crochet, double crochet, invisible decrease, increase, slip stitch, chain stitch, and the magic circle. To make the mittens, we're going to start with a magic circle. And inside our magic circle, we're going to do 6 single crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and number 6. And then we're going to pull our tail to bring them all together. For our next row, we're going to do a single crochet and an increase 3 times. We're going to start with a single crochet, let's add our stitch marker, and then an increase. There's 1 and 2 single crochets in the same stitch for an increase. Then we're going to start again with the single crochet and then an increase. And 1 more of the sequence of a single crochet, and an increase. And then we're going to flip our work so that it's on the correct side here. Pull it down, and then we're going to tighten up the center by pulling the tail. Now we're ready to continue with the next row. For the next row, we're going to do 9 single crochets all the way around. We're going to start with our first single crochet, add our stitch marker, and then continue making the single crochets all the way around. There's number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, number 8, and number 9. For our next row, we're going to make the thumb part of the mitten. We're going to start with 4 single crochets. There's 1, 2, number 3, and number 4. And here in number 5, we're going to do 3 half double crochets all in this one stitch. We're going to yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. That's 1 half double crochet, another, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. That's number 2, and then 1 more. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And then we're going to do 4 more single crochets. So in our next stitch, we're going to do a single crochet. So that's 1, 2, number 3, and number 4. And we're done with the row. And here's the little thumb part. For our next row, we're going to start with 3 single crochets. There is our first. We're going to add a stitch marker. And here is our second and our third single crochet. And then for this next stitch, we're going to go into this 4th stitch. Then we're going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to go into the next stitch. And then we're going to make a slip stitch. And then we're going to do a chain 1, turn over our work, and then continue with 3 single crochets. So there's our first single crochet on the other side, our second, and our third single crochet. And here we should have a total of 8 stitches because we added a slip stitch and a chain 1. Next, we're going to do 8 single crochets all the way around. We have 8 because we have 1 that was a slip stitch and the other a chain 1. So we're going to start with our first single crochet. Then add our stitch marker. And here is number 2. Number 3. And this tiny one, number 4. And another smaller crochet for number 5. Number 6. Number 7. And here is number 8. And now we're ready to move on to our next row. For our next row, we're going to do a color change to brown because we're going to make her arms and it's going to look like a tree branch. So we're going to go into our next single crochet. We're going to yarn over and pull up the loop. So now we have 2 loops on our hook. Then we're going to take our brown cord, put it over our hook, and pull through the 2 loops. And then we're going to go into the next stitch. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops, making our first brown single crochet. We're going to get our stitch marker. I'm going to put in our stitch marker, and then we're going to continue making single crochets all the way around. So there's our second, our third, our fourth, there's number 5, 6, 7, and number 8. So now that we've successfully made our color change, we can cut this red yarn off. And then I'm going to tuck the yarns inside. And then we're going to continue on our next row. So for our next row, we're going to do single crochets all the way around. So we're going to start with our first single crochet. I'm going to add the stitch marker. And then we're going to do a total of 4 of these rows. So this is our first row. So for each row, I'm going to add a stitch marker at the beginning. And when I have 4 stitch markers, then I know I've done 4 rows. And we'll return back after the 4 rows. Completed our 4 rows of our 8 single crochets, and we're ready to finish this row off. So here I'm going to cut this yarn about a foot, and I'm going to pull it through. And here we're going to get the darning needle and make our arm a little even by making our fake little stitch. So we're going to skip one and then go into the other stitch, the next stitch, and then back down to the back loop of our first stitch. And then here we're going to leave this yarn so that we can sew it onto our snowman. But we're going to stuff our arm. So we're going to get some stuffing and just place it into the arm. We're just going to add a little bit more. some more down here. And here we're going to need to make 2 of these arms. To make the scarf, we're going to start with 65 chains. We're going to make a slip knot and then 65 chains. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're just going to continue making a chain until we reach 65 of them, and then we'll meet back to do the rest of the scarf. After we have 65 chains, we're going to do 3 more chains. So there's 1, 2, 3 chains, and then we're going to do double crochets. So we're going to yarn over, skip these 3 chains, go into the 4th chain, and do a double crochet. And then we're going to continue making these double crochets until we have 65 of them. And then we'll meet back for our next steps. And once all of the 65 double crochets are finished, we're going to pull our cord and cut the cord and pull our cord out. And then here we could just use these ends to make those little tassels at the end. On this side, I added the little tassels at the end, and this side we can do the same. So here I have the cord and the darning needle, and I'm going to go through this corner stitch here. And then I'm going to take these 2 ends. I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller. So this is the end of the scarf, and this is the new cord that we put on. And then we're just going to tie a knot. So we have tassel strands here, and then we're going to take the other side of the cord. So I'm going to cut it here. And I'm going to go in through this corner here. And then I'm going to cut this to the same size to make it easier to tie. And then I'm going to tie these 2 together in a knot. So then we have the 2 knots on the side, so the 2 tassels on the side, and we just need one in the middle. So I have this here. I'm going to go through the middle. Bring the sides, the ends together, and then just tie a knot. I'll just bring these together and then cut them. So then we have the 3 little tassels on this side and this side. This one we can straighten it out a little bit more. And now we're finished with our snowman scarf. To make our bow, we're going to start with 10 chains. Here is our slip knot. And then we're going to do 10 chains. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then we're going to do a chain 1 for our single crochets. In this first chain here, we're going to do a single crochet. And we can add our stitch marker. And then in our next stitch, we're going to do double crochet. And we're going to repeat that double crochet in the next stitch. And then we're going to do a single crochet. And then 2 slip stitches in the next 2 chains. So there's our first slip stitch and our second slip stitch. And then we're doing a single crochet. And 2 double crochets. There's 1, and 2 double crochets. Next, we're going to do 2 chains. So there's 1, 2 chains, and then we're going to turn our work over to the other side. And here we're going to start with a double crochet. So we're going to yarn over and then go into this first stitch. And then we're going to do another double crochet in the next stitch, just like the other side. And then a single crochet. And then 2 slip stitches. There's 1 and 2 slip stitches. Then we're doing a single crochet. And then 2 double crochets. So we're going to yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2, and then 1 more double crochet. And then we're going to join this to our first crochet here with a slip stitch. So I'm going to remove this stitch marker. And then I'm going to do a slip stitch. We're going to cut our yarn. pull it through, and then we're going to get our darning needle and we're going to make our fake little crochet. And here we have the darning needle. We're going to skip a stitch, go into the next stitch, and back into the back loop of this first stitch here, that little tiny slip stitch. And then we're going to pull them together so that they look very similar in size. And then we're going to weave our end through. And then I'm going to put this through to the back. Then I'm going to go through these here. Then I'm going to tie the two ends together. And then I'm going to cut the ends off. And we'll be gluing the back side down to our snowman. And here you can shape up the bow a little bit. And we're going to make our middle. And now we're going to make the middle of the bow. We're going to start with our favorite magic circle. And then we're going to do 6 single crochets inside the circle. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and number 6. Then we're going to pull the tail to bring all of our crochets in a circle. And then we're going to join the circle with a slip stitch. So we're going into that first single crochet and then pulling it through our loop to make a slip stitch. And then we're going to pull our yarn and then cut it, pull it all the way through, and we have this tail to pull to make the middle tighter. So we're going to take this tail and we're going to get our darning needle and we're going to put it on the other side through that back loop. Then we're going to take this tail, the one we just finished with. We're going to put it through the back loop of the next stitch. And then to that back stitch of the previous. And then we have the middle of our bow. Then we're going to take our bow that we just finished and we're going to just tie it on there. In the back. And here we're finished with our bow, and we can shape it a little bit. And here we could either sew it onto the snowman or we can glue it. But now we're done with our bow. To make our hat, we're going to start with a magic circle. And inside our magic circle, we're going to do 6 single crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and number 6. And then we're going to pull our tail to bring all of our stitches into a circle. Next, we're going to do 6 single crochets all the way around. So I'm going to start in this first little stitch. There's our first single crochet. We're going to add our stitch marker, and then we're going to continue to our second, third, fourth, fifth, and our 6th single crochet. And then we're going to put our hat the correct way. And we're going to tighten up the center a little bit. For our third row, we're going to start with a single crochet. I'm going to add the stitch marker. And then we're going to do an increase. We're going to do that same sequence of a single crochet and an increase 3 times. So there's a single crochet and an increase. And then a single crochet and an increase. And here we should have a total of 9 single crochets. For our next row, we're going to do 9 single crochets all the way around. There's our first single crochet. We're going to get our stitch marker. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and number 9. For our next row, we're going to do 2 single crochets and an increase. Here is our first single crochet. I'm going to get a stitch marker. our second single crochet and an increase. We're going to do that a total of 3 times. So we're going to do 1, 2 single crochets and an increase. And one more time, 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and an increase. And here we should have a total of 12 single crochets. For our next row, we're going to do 3 single crochets and an increase. There's our first single crochet. Our second, and our third. Then we're going to do an increase. And then again, 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and an increase. And one last time, 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and an increase. And here we should have a total of 15 single crochets. For row number 7, we're going to do 4 single crochets and an increase. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 single crochets and an increase. And we're going to repeat this for a total of 3 times. So we're going to do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and an increase. And one last time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and an increase. And here we should have a total of 18 single crochets. For our next row, we're going to do a color change. So we're going to go into our first stitch, yarn over, pull through. Then when we have 2 loops on our hook, we're going to grab our new color, which we're going to use white. We're going to pull through those 2 loops. And then we're going to go into the next stitch and do a single crochet. And there's our first white single crochet, and this is for the bottom trim of the hat. And there's our stitch marker. And then we're going to continue to make 5 single crochets and an increase. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets and an increase. And we're going to repeat that 3 times. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets and an increase. And one more time, 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 single crochets, and then an increase. And here we should have a total of 21 single crochets. We're going to do one more row of the white. So we're going to do 21 single crochets all the way around. Here's our first single crochet. I'm also going to cut the red off since we won't be using the red anymore. And let's add our stitch marker to that first single crochet. And then we're going to continue our single crochets until we get 21. And then we'll meet back to finish our row. And here we're on our final single crochet. And we're going to pull our yarn, then cut it, pull it through, and then we're going to get our darning needle to finish off our hat. Here we have our darning needle. We're going to skip a stitch, go into the next stitch, and into the back loop of that first stitch. Then we're going to tighten it up a little bit. And then we're going to weave our end through. I think that should be good. I'm going to cut the end. And we can also tie these two ends together in a knot. This is the end from the color change and the end from our last stitch. Just cut those. And we're finished with our hat. And all we need to do is add a little white pom-pom on top. And you can probably even put pom-poms on the bottom here if you want to, or some fur, but we're finished with our little hat. So here I pinned the arm on to the body, and I made sure that the top of the arm didn't go past the row where we have our stitch marker. That way it won't collide with the scarf. So we're going to start sewing the arm on. I'm using the tail that we have left from crocheting the arm. So I'm going to go into these 2 stitches on that row where we have our stitch marker. So that's on our body, and then I'm going to go into the arm. So I'm going to go into this first stitch here, and then down the next stitch. So then we're going back into the body. I'm going into the next stitch, and then I'm going to go down stitch. And then I'm going to go through the arm into the next stitch. And then down the following stitch. Then we're going to go into the next 2 stitches on the body, and that's going around, so I'm going to go straight. So then we're going around the arm, so I'm going up the arm and then down the next stitch on the arm. And then we're going into the next 2 stitches on the body. And then back up into the arm. And then down the arm. So we're at the beginning of our arm already. And then I'm just going to go back down into the body here and then come out on the other side towards the bottom, and this should secure our arm. And then I'm going to cut this off. And we're finished with sewing on our arm. And we're going to do the same on the other side. So here I sewed on the second arm on the body, and if you're counting the stitches between the 2 arms, on the 5th row down, we have 21 rows in between. So here we have the scarf. I'm going to tie that on. You can tie this on however you want to tie it on, but I'm just going to do it the traditional looking way, and then I'll probably stitch it together so that it doesn't come off later on. And now we're going to do the face and the bow. Here we have the eyes and the nose. For our Hello Kitty face, we're going to start with the nose, and I'm going to put it 6 rows up. So I'm going to count from the neck here. This is the first row. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm going to put the stitch marker right after the 6th row. And then I'm going to put glue on my nose, and we'll be back to put it on. So here I have glue on the nose, and I'm going to place it right above that 6th row. I'm going to make sure that it's in the middle of the head. And that looks pretty good. And once we have our nose on, we're going to go 4 down. So there's 1, 2, 3, and this is number 4. And we're going to put our eye here. So I'm going to get our eye, and here we have our eye with our glue on there. And we're going to put it right here on that 4th stitch. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the bottom of the eye should be at the middle of the nose. And that the eye is straight. And we're going to do the same with the other side. And here we have 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to put it on the 4th stitch here. And I'm going to make sure that the bottom is at the middle of the nose and that the eye is straight. Okay, now we have both of our eyes glued on. Now we're going to make the whiskers for the face. We're going to start 3 of these holes from the eye. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to go 4 down. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to go into that 4th one and then go through that 3rd one from the eye. So right in here. And then I'm going to leave a tail out so that we can tie the knot. And then here, I'm going to go back into the same row of the middle whisker. And then I'm going to go up 2 rows. So I'm going to go up 2 rows and into the stitch that aligns with the middle. And then I'm going to go up 1 row, not the same, but up 1. And I'm going to go in the same stitch where the end of the middle whisker is. So not through here, but 1 up. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to go down 2 rows. So there's 1, 2. I'm going to go into this stitch here. And then I'm going to go down 1 row, not straight across, but down 1. I'm going to go into this stitch here, and then I'm going to go back up to the middle. And then I'm going to cut the needle off. And I'm going to tie the 2 ends in a knot. And we're going to cut them shorter. And then I'm going to get the needle. And I'm going to tuck in the knot. Just going to push it down. And shape the face back up. And then we're done with the whiskers. We're going to do the same on the other side. And now we're going to add our hat to our snowman. I'm going to put 1 stitch in front and 1 in the back. I'm going to place it on the head. And then I'm going to put a stitch in the back. And then I'm going to go into her hat. And then down the stitch on her hat. and then back into the head. And then I'm going to go to the front of the head. I think that's the right place. And then I'm going to go into the hat and the other stitch in the hat. And then I'm going to go into the stitch in the front, and then I'm going to end it in the back. And then I'm going to tie these two ends together. You can add more stitches if you want, but I think this will hold the hat on. And there's our knot. And I'm going to cut the ends. And then tuck in the knot. And then we have our hat on. And I have a white pom-pom to put on top, and I might add some white little pom-poms at the bottom. And here I have the pom-pom. I'm going to just glue it right on top here. You can also use a bigger one or a shinier one. I might want a bigger one on. If you don't have a pom-pom and you don't want to buy a whole package of them, just for one, you can use fiber fill. To make the pom-pom out of the fiber fill, dampen your hands a little bit with water and just start rolling. And the longer you roll, the tighter the ball will become. And you can just glue it and put it on top, just like we did here. If you want to make the trim, you would just take the fiber fill and just roll it the long way. I also use the fiber fill for the trim on the hat and on the mittens, but I use pom-poms for these 3 buttons. And now we've completed our Hello Kitty Snowman. If you want to make a larger Hello Kitty Snowman, you can use the same pattern, but with thicker yarn. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this tutorial. I hope you are able to watch all 3 parts and make this Hello Kitty Snowman. If you found this tutorial useful, please hit that thumbs up button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Also hit that notification bell so you know when our next video is out. Have a wonderful day.